Okay.
Super cool. It was a crazy song.
Well, good morning. Call the SELCO Commission meeting to order on Tuesday, September 24th, and it's 8:03. So with that, we have everyone's here. So the meeting is called to order. First item on the thing is election of officers. We normally have a chairman and then a vice chairman. So do we have any nominations for either one of those
Yes,
positions?
secretary too. I nominate
So
Bob
secretary.
Holland for chairman.
Second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
I don't think we have to roll call. Okay, for vice chair, I recommend,
Mike.
that's right.
No, I
No.
say I was gonna recommend Mike.
Okay, yeah, Mike Ruffolo, and I'll second that nomination. All in favor of Michael Ruffolo as the vice chair?
Aye.
And then secretary?
For the 40th year, I nominate Tony Trippi.
Yeah, we wouldn't, I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we have no change in,
They searched my
Change
name.
in office.
no
No
change in
upheaval.
office. The real estate agents won't be making a lot of money selling houses as people move in and out of the area due to the election. Okay, with that said, the next is review and consider approval of the August 2024 bill schedules and warrants. Do we have any comments or corrections to be made or on the
comments
warrants? None? Hearing none, do we have a recommendation on that?
So move.
Okay. To accept the warrant, to accept the warrants? Okay.
Warrants, yeah.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Next thing we have is to consider and approve the meeting minutes of August 6th, 2024. Any comments or corrections to be made?
No comment.
Not hearing any. Do we have a motion to accept the minutes of August 6th?
So move.
Okay, I'll second that.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I
Okay.
can't. I wasn't here.
Okay, that's fine, got it. Okay, and then next is review the first, quarter one and quarter two financials. First, the electric. Mr. Zucco.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, and I'll be going through them a little bit quick today because we have a little bit of a time crunch. But good morning, and today is the Q2 2024 financials. First, we'll go over electric, then we'll go over cable. Taking a look at the electric, we can see here from the income statement that our quarter budget to actuals for total operating revenue was about 3% above plan, and from year to date is about 2% above plan. Taking a look at our total operating expenses, quarter to date we're about 3% below plan, and year to date about 5% below plan. The one item that is above plan right now, it comes from our customer service and expense, and this is part of our DSM stuff, and we're just monitoring this as we go throughout the year. And since our financials are looking good, we're extending that budget because it helps strengthen our grid and hopefully lowers costs overall as we go. Continuing down, if we take a look, our gross income above plan is about 200% over for the quarter, and for the year is about 175% over. Some of this is due to the fact that we have higher revenue than planned and lower operating expenses, as well as we have some higher total or other income, and this comes as well from stuff like extra jobs we do for customers, like capital work, where we receive money, insurance claims where someone hits a pole. We had a couple of expensive ones this year. Taking a look now at our net income from a quarter-to-date perspective, we're about 166% above plan for the quarter, and for the year, we are almost 150% above. This brings our net income into about 1.2% on our return, and this is about on target. All of these numbers are prior to any rate increases this year.
Are there any timing differences? So like, will we like steady off by the end of the year from these variances?
For the percentages,
Yeah.
we may settle off, but what we're going to see is an increase in our revenue when the new rate increase goes through.
Sure.
From an expense perspective, we've been monitoring them for this year because we didn't know if it was going to go through. So some of that stuff should level off. But some of this, when you see the expenses a little bit lower in certain areas like distribution and stuff like that, it could also be because we have a lot of capital work that comes in from third parties that isn't known or planned at that time. So that can help lower expenses, because on a normal day, we have to pay our employees out of our revenue, where that is now paid for by the contractors. So it does lower what would be planned expenses. So we should see some stuff level off, some stuff may stay under. It just depends on what our needs are and how we start to forecast that.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Taking a look at the year over year, from a quarter to date perspective, our total operating revenue is down about 24%, and year to date it's down about 23%. Looking down at our operating expenses, they are about 2% less quarter to date and 6% less year to date. One thing you'll notice is that from a year to date perspective, our purchase power has gone down about $2 million, while our transmission is still increasing. It's just one good thing to kind of note, based on some of the unsteadiness we've seen in the last year in the electric market. Taking a look at our operating income year over or quarter to date, we are down about 97%, and year to date about 94%. Taking a look at the total net income for the quarter to date, we're down about 90%, and that's almost the same from a year to date perspective. And this was to be expected based on some of the higher costs we thought we were going to see and where we kept the rates last year, and that became the overages we put over to the rate stabilization. Jumping down to our balance sheet, taking a look at our total current assets, they are down about 2.9 million year over year, and taking a look at our total non-current assets, they are down about 5 million. The main cause for that decrease is basically the net pension and the deferred outflows. Those are the things that are mainly controlled by the auditors, and we'll have some sort of correction at the end of the year or adjustment made. And the total of this was offset, like I just said previously, with the money that we increased in the rate stabilization. This brings our total assets down to about 8 million for the year so far. Taking a look at our total liabilities, they have decreased about 4.6 million, and our earned surplus has decreased about 3.3 billion, bringing the total liabilities and earned surplus down about 8 million as well. Taking a look at our cash flow, we started the year off with about 6 million in operating cash, and we're currently around 5.2 million. This number should be help supported by the rate increase, and by the end of the year, we'll should level off and see a little bit of increase or growth, hopefully, in that number. Our total funds sit at about 15 million for the electric. And now to remind everybody, we did remove 4 million last year to put in rate stabilization, so that reflects in our operating cash. I know that was a little quick, but any questions before we move on to cable? Okay. So jumping into cable for Q2 2024, taking a look at the income statement, our total operating revenue from a quarter-to-date perspective is down about, or it's below plan 2%, and same for year-to-date. Taking a look at our total operating expenses, they are above plan for quarter-to-date about 1%, and are below plan 2% for year-to-date. Now, one thing to notice, one of these line items says head-end maintenance. Well, the head end is gone as of August, so in the next financials, you will now see this as the data center, because it was explained to me recently that without the video equipment that we will be removing, that is no longer a head end, and that is now a data center. Taking a look at our operating income, we are below plan about 11% from a quarter-to-date perspective, and 2% from a year-to-date. That brings our net income from operations, and this is before the IT agreement stuff, 12% below quarter to date and 5% for year to date. Now, taking a look at our non-operating activities, this is our IT agreement, and this is the first time that we can, I think, present this fully, but this would be our non-pilot cash portion would be about this 180,000 here is what we will be transferring in July over to match the fiscal timing for the town, but that would be our contribution for their fiscal year 2024. That brings our net adjusted income from operations to about 2.1 million for year to date, bringing us about 7% below plan. Taking a look at our year over year, you'll see our total operating revenue from a quarter to date perspective is below plan or below the prior year by 8%, and from a year to date perspective, 7%. Taking a look at total operating expenses, they're above plan by 5% for the quarter perspective, but below plan 1% from a year to date. One thing to kind of note for these, if you're looking at the distribution plant expenses, they're the only one or the main ones that increased this year or are higher. We dove into these because this would be the year that you'd think, okay, infrastructure, we're building out the fiber, everything should be capitalized. The increase here is based on devices. So going forward, we now have, from a video perspective, the Evo Pros. From a broadband perspective, we have modems and ONTs, which for anybody out there that doesn't know what an ONT is, it is a modem for fiber, essentially. I'll let anybody behind me that understands it better just burn inside. But basically going forward, these items are no longer capitalized. This is for a few different reasons, but we ran this by our auditors last year, and based on our system functionality, overall cost per item, and then how long we're planning potentially to use these items before they'll be replaced, and the complexity of trying to capitalize and then retire them properly, it makes more sense now to expense these. Going forward, there will be a hopefully more of a refresh kind of cycle, so you'll only see about a similar expense every year that would hit for that, so it won't be one big type of drop. Now, going down to other operating income, from a quarter to date perspective, we are below plan about 41%, and from a year to date, about 29%. Taking a look down to the net income, that brings us to about 42% below plan for the quarter and about 30% below plan for year to date. Once we factor in the IT agreement, if we look at the net income adjusted for operations, we are below plan about 21%, and from a quarter to date perspective, and from a year to date perspective, about 26%. Looking at our balance sheet, and you'll notice this nice data center.
Can I ask you just one quick question?
Yes.
On the devices, are you expensing them as you're purchasing them or as they're being placed in use?
As we're purchasing them.
Okay.
That was one of the issues for why we can't capitalize them,
Okay.
because we're not allowed to capitalize them upon purchase like we are with meters and transformers. And that would be the issue with, we don't know when they're going to go into the field, so it becomes a timing issue. So as an inventory item, they are considered an exempt inventory item, which only tracks quantity, not cost in the system. Yeah.
So is that our equipment?
That is our equipment, yes.
And
so those are like the little Evo Pro boxes for people who opted to get those for video, or it would be if you have a modem, any routers, those type of equipment that, all this stuff is what we rent to customers.
And then you depreciate that over 2 years or something? Or
No.
It's
No.
all, we
Done away
stopped
with
doing that now. In part of the thought
Expense in
process,
the first same year.
yes.
As we purchase them, we're just expensing them?
Expensing them. In part of the thought process, especially from like an Evo Pro perspective, we might have to be refreshing those every 2, 3 years, 4 years. It's very similar to like a Fire Stick where the the actual hardware might get surpassed by the software technology. So we got to make sure people have the equipment that gets them the best streaming possible. And once again, accountant explanation, so don't anybody at home take that as like, you know, what the text would say and how they would do it. Taking a look at the balance sheet, our total current assets are decreased about 362,000 year over year, and our non-current assets increased about 3.3 million, and that's mainly due to the fiber project, bringing our total asset increase to about 3 million. Now, if you take a look, this is the liability for the data center. That's just my accounting humor. But looking at the liabilities for year over year, you have a decrease of about almost 700,000, and the total earned surplus increased about 3.7 million, bringing total liabilities and earned surplus to about 3 million. Taking a look at our cash flow has increased, decreased slightly this year from the beginning of the year, where we had 20.9 million to start, and we're at about 20.3 million in our operating fund. I do expect by the end of this year our bond fund to go to zero. We just haven't done that analysis. We've been doing that at the end of the year, and that should wipe out the bond portion of the fiber project. Taking a look, our total fund for, and I will say communications and not necessarily cable, because we're switching over from video, is about 47.9 million. Any questions?
Yeah, what about all the antennas and all at the head end? Are those being removed?
Some, not all.
Correct. Out of the 8 dishes that we have,
Can you please use the mic?
sorry. So the tower is still being used because that's what is being used for off-the-air channels like Channel 20, Fox 25, ABC, CBS. But the satellite dishes, out of the 8 dishes that we have, only 1 is being used, so 7 will eventually be removed. Because everything is now coming from the cloud, from, in this case, Minerva.
Is there any valuable real estate we can use for anything?
Real estate, yes. That's actually, Chris has some plans that
good.
we are currently researching.
Any other questions? If not, thank you for your report, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on, we have a review and consider approval of letter of support for the Underground Service Rebate Program and Grid Resilience Grant Opportunity. With that said,
All right. We did assemble some slides for this, and I have to give credit to Patrick Collins for doing a lot of this work, but apparently this is one of the last major bike races, so he's off
And he won.
pursuing his Olympic dreams.
Also, by the way,
I'm sorry?
he won the whole race.
Oh, he already had it. Oh, there we go.
yeah,
He
this past
won.
weekend, yeah.
Was it?
There's up in Michigan, in northern Michigan,
Michigan.
cross, it's not cross country, but what's
Bicycle.
Yeah,
Mountain biking.
pardon?
Mountain biking.
Yes, mountain bike, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Good for
You
him.
want to join the meeting?
He got all that training during the,
Go.
he got all that training during the pandemic delivering the boxes, remember? We had to
exactly.
ride
Yeah, right.
Yeah, how was this?
That's awesome.
Oh, okay.
So with that, then it defers to me to present on the undergrounding strategy that we have before you.
So click on it.
So just to add some context that ultimately culminates into this request for board support and in turn some potential grant money. I just wanted to cover some of the key details about undergrounding and underground design as a strategy. And I'm happy to answer any questions related to that. So some of the key bullet points, oh, there we go. You'll see in the slides here on the second slide, there's some of the obvious things that, you know, logic dictates, right? Increased reliability. Just by having infrastructure that's underground, you're less susceptible to, you know, your typical outage causes, namely storms, you know, automobile accidents, and wildlife. I mean, being your big three. As you can see, I find one of the most interesting charts is on that second slide, with
Sorry for the tab.
yeah, with percentage of outages in the overhead areas. So as you can see, our GIS has us trending closer to about a 50-50 mix of overhead to underground in Shrewsbury in general. But as you can see in the lighter blue, each year, that's the number of outages, the percentage of outages in the overhead areas throughout Shrewsbury. So you can see, you know, even 2021, 99% of our outages were in the 50% of Shrewsbury that is overhead. So you can see, you know, there's quite a definitive correlation between service interruptions and overhead infrastructure. So we put together some of these quick bullet points. I mean, grid hardening, you know, a big initiative across the state and in the country in general is, you know, vulnerability preparedness. Again, as weather tends to become more extreme and we see more weather events, that puts more emphasis on the need for infrastructure that's going to be durable. That, coupled with a couple of key bullet points, which I think maybe perhaps aren't talked about as much, is as we set these objectives for electrification, that further emphasizes the importance of a reliable grid. I mean, it's always reliable. No one wants a power outage. But now is everything, your car, your heating, your cooling, your water, everything is going to rely on electricity. The notion that a squirrel could take you down on a Zoom call with, you know, a client overseas is just way less tolerable than it used to be. So all of that, you know, points to this direction with underground strategy and design. And then there's the aesthetic component, you know, that with all of that said, it's also just more desirable. You see your downtown areas, the areas that you're looking to represent a community always tend to be underground. So that it's just kind of a win-win in that regard. And the other bullet point we put in here is the 100 amp to 200 amp as an example, service upgrades. So one of the things that as the country, especially in New England with older housing stock, trends towards electrification, you're finding that many homes still have 100 amp services. So one of the challenges that we face is, you know, how do we get people of a, you know, a variety of income classes, you know, the ability to upgrade their own individual services to also participate in electrification efforts. So that's kind of also wrapped into this initiative with the underground strategy and this rebate that we're going to talk about in a second. And not to mention, sorry, I just see this last bullet point, I'll have to speak to that, is, you know, a common thing that comes up too. Yes, it's a known fact, undergrounding has a higher capital outlay at the outset, but as we talked about with outages and storm response and tree trimming and rotting poles and all of that, you pay for the maintenance in the long term. So there's ultimately lower operational costs with an underground system. So on the next slide, you can just see, you know, some of the evolution in perspective with you know, to highlight some of the things I just described. Overhead being simple and easy, which is somewhat true. It's easier to troubleshoot. It's easier to install. But that defines, there's a lot of different things you come across in life that might meet that criteria. However, it's not, that comes with its negative impacts, which is what you see in the outage indices, right? It's a lot more susceptible to damage and interruption.
I just had a thought about the freezing temperatures. What happens when it's freezing out and you're trying to work on these lines underground? Is it,
That's
give it
a,
a problem?
that's a great question. It can be if the conduit breaks and you're trying to dig up frozen ground, but that is not the norm.
That doesn't happen that often.
It doesn't happen that often. Utility holes actually tend to be warmer because of
Yeah, true.
the heat
Wow.
loss, so it actually could be more pleasant to work in the utility hole than up on the pole in the middle of the wind. So that just helps keeps things more temperature controlled. The underground wire we buy, not to get too technical, and I know we have the time considerations. The underground wire we buy is warranted for 40 years. So there's that component where the underground infrastructure is designed and warranted for multiple decades. Some of these, not to repeat myself, I'll just kind of skim over here, is the lower upfront cost versus the long-term outage tolerance, the saving of restoration expenses, which are obviously difficult to predict, but when they happen, that the initial underground investment pays for itself in perhaps one storm, arguably. And then the other bullet point I wanted to call attention to is the pending bylaw that we talked about at town meeting. Just as a reminder, I'm sure we recall that, but this dovetails nicely with the effort to, over time, transition to more underground infrastructure. Okay, on the next slide, we have just a couple of bullet points with how this aligns with other community initiatives. I already mentioned the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Plan, the MVP plan. The CARP, the Climate Action and Resilience Plan, calls for more resilient infrastructure. The electrification I just described. And again, I don't think it is exaggerating this point where our entire economy relies on electricity. Our cable system, if we lose power, the cable system goes down. If we, now if you have an EV, if you lose electricity, that impacts transportation. So all of these things are trending in that direction.
Chris, just a quick question. Are there opportunities with like HDD versus, or is it all going to be timed with sort of surface reconstruction?
Great question.
What's HDD?
Oh, sorry. Horizontal directional drilling. So just drill
Oh,
it
right,
instead
okay, yeah.
of ripping the whole road up.
Yep. It's been a few years since I've received quotes on that, but my experience has shown the directional drilling is dramatically more expensive.
Yeah.
So it's more of a targeted application. So to your point, by trending in this direction now, we can coordinate it with the roads program, with water, sewer, upgrades, things like that. So communities, well, this is more targeted at services, so I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, but in general, the undergrounding effort, when coordinated with public works programs, can minimize disruption. And obviously, new pavement, there's repaving costs and trenching costs and those requirements. So with a little planning, it helps. But yes, surface construction is the more cost-effective option. So with all that said, on the next slide, is kind of where we're getting into the meat and potatoes of today's ask. SELCO's underground rebate program. So there's the SELCO component, right away, poles and wires, the main thoroughfares. But really this rebate program is targeted at one of the more challenging aspects of undergrounding is house services. And not also businesses for sure, that's included in this, but it's just for conversation's sake, it's easier to say house services because that's what people kind of relate to. But it's those individual drops that go from the road to the premise that are challenging to address, certainly in a storm. I mean, that's the worst part, right? You can have 5 poles or X number of poles knocked down, bring them back up, and thousands of people come back. But then at the end of the storm, it's the long, trudge after multiple hours of restoration that you have to go to every house, put put up a new service drop, you could have hundreds of service drops down. And, and that is a challenge. And B, there's an electrician component, so you might show up at someone's house and we can't actually restore the service because you have to get an electrician to fix certain parts of it. So it's really, I'd say, a lesser known sore point with respect to the reliability of the system. So this underground rebate program is targeted to encourage folks to take the initiative for their own properties and underground their individual services, to help that reliability component, to expedite storm restoration. There's the aesthetic component, and B, it or whatever letter I'm at, it dovetails nicely with the service upgrades, because with electrification, the natural timing to also do an underground service conversion is when you're addressing your electrical system in your own home. Okay, so you can see here some budgetary numbers, just looking at taking some of the figures from basically the current costs of undergrounding and converting, and one other program that is implemented like this in Massachusetts, using some statistics from their adoption rates and things like that. So estimated 2 to 5 year budget is $150,000. We've applied for a grant for 100,000 of that, and the program would basically run until the funds are exhausted, and then at that point we can evaluate the effectiveness of the program.
What do you think the cost would be per person, per household?
So, that's on a subsequent slide. So, so I guess we can go to the grant one, and I'll answer that at the same time.
Yeah.
Actually, it's 2 slides away, so if I can
Yeah, no,
address
that's
that
right.
in 2 slides. So there's just to give you more information on the grant funding opportunity. The Grid Resilience Formula Grant Program, it has a goal there, as you can see, prevent outages and enhance the resilience of the electric grid. So that fits right in theme with what we're trying to accomplish here. And you can see example applications fit right in with the program that we're discussing. Undergrounding electrical equipment, hardening power lines, substations, pole management, and fire prevention.
I didn't understand that map. What's the yellow and what's the white?
Okay, great question. So part of this is, if you look at the map of Shrewsbury there, that is the indication of areas that have environmental justice communities. And so those are the areas that meet I believe in this case, the federal criteria for either income or language, challenges and disadvantages that that are across the state. So this is Shrewsbury's particular component where, as you can see, we have I forget the exact percentage. I don't know if you remember, but it's like 60% of Shrewsbury falls within one of the criteria for environmental justice, and so that also supports our grant funding opportunities, where you can see there's a heavy focus on projects in areas that benefit the EJ community. There it is, Dale.
Perplexed me for years. So.
That's happening.
So,
So the larger portion yellow fits within some economic
yes.
need or whatever.
Yes, I believe some a big chunk of ours is language.
Okay.
Is English as a second language. Okay, so just going on quickly to program design, and I'll answer that question.
Yeah.
So we looked at, the cost, because we get service upgrades through our normal course of business. We have electricians on our own staff. So we're targeting a $40 per foot underground up to $3,500. So as one could imagine, right, any service is different. your terrain for your underground service, the makeup of your particular household. If you're doing a service upgrade, your panel could be located in a different location than someone else. You might have a finished basement where someone might not. So all of those variables come into play for a specific cost for an individual home, but on average, in a typical home in New England, with manageable soil that's not a slab of granite, we're looking at a typical cost of probably on the order of, $4,500, maybe $5,000. So we targeted this rebate to fit in there on the order of 80 to 90% of coverage for the additional cost of the undergrounding effort. So the idea is to incentivize undergrounding the electric service, but not fully cover the actual cost of the conversion. It's an incentive as opposed to just a full cost allocation. And so to support that and dovetail that with service upgrades, the other benefit, if you will, is you could access our 0% interest loan program for that up to another $3,500. So to that point, you have the rebate, but then the additional components that are not covered by the rebate, you could leverage our 0 interest loan program, which you can already do today. And so,
Just a clarifying question, because this seems specific to the drops, individual drops to the houses versus the distribution system itself.
exactly.
Is this more targeted towards that than
Yes.
the distribution system? Okay.
Yes, so it's truly, for the presentation, we didn't put in the actual term sheet, but yes, it's the drops, if you will.
Okay.
So it's the pole to the home or small business or anything that's secondary run from that, call it for argument's sake, 120, 240 volt drop from the transformer to the house. And those are the ones that we'd like to start getting underground. And it helps our efforts, just to dovetail on that point. If we then go through with a SELCO infrastructure project and all those house services are already underground, it streamlines the whole thing. You connect into handholds or just bring pipes right into our network of boxes, and it makes that conversion project that much more seamless. And then, excuse me, as you can see, you obviously have to have an account in good standing. And then for income qualified customers, we added that $250 adder, again, to help encourage, or I should say, help make it accessible to a wide audience. And then just the last slide is, to your point, if you want to peruse the EJ map or read more about the grant, the links are there. But that's the idea, is in a nutshell, is to encourage homeowners to underground their individual services to their homes. That expedites our undergrounding efforts at some point in the future. It adds reliability and resilience, and it dovetails nicely with the fact that we're looking at service upgrades anyway, and this encourages them to go underground, and it also aids outage restoration and the inevitable storms that are going to be coming in the future. And the idea is to leverage this grant program for a substantial portion of that cost, and that'll give us some data about how the things are going within Shrewsbury. Which goes to I almost forgot, the final ask is, in order to help with that grant application, they ask for a letter of support from the governing body, and that's that letter attaching to that. So if you think this sounds like a good program, we would ask that you consider signing the letter.
Can I ask a question about the $4,500 to $5,000 estimate?
Sure.
Is that in the $40 per foot? That's just for the drop, right? That's
Yeah.
not, doesn't include any like landscaping, additional landscaping that would have to get done.
That is just the trenching and then restoring it back to,
It is
grass
restoring
seed.
Okay, so it is restoring, okay.
What if there's driveway and brick walkway? They do
That's-
that, that's the
that's-
problem,
that would be,
That's the loan part.
yeah, that's the big
That's the
part.
loan part, yeah.
You know, well, you know, in my experience, I've seen, you know, prized paver
Yeah,
walkways
right,
and, you know, so it's, it varies a lot, but you see, I mean, the majority of homes fall within the average installation type, grass to the side of the home.
So this is spotted, anybody anywhere can say, oh, I want this, and they'll do it.
Yep.
And how many, do you have a maximum as to how many could do this in a year relative to, the employees we have and or the budget?
Yeah,
Okay, good.
150.
Good question. This is all private homeowner driven. So it's similar to, say, a solar rebate. You hire a solar contractor, we provide the rebate. This is if you're looking to underground your service, you hire your electrician, the electrician coordinates all of the work, and then you contact us. We'll make sure the installation meets our spec. If everything's in line, we'll approve you for the rebate.
So, is the grant, you said you were gonna ask for a grant of 100, was it 100,000?
Yes.
Okay, and we're gonna give and we're gonna use that for the rebate? Or are we using it out of our own funds?
So the grant, there's a 50, they ask for a utility contribution. So the overall budget that we'd allocate is 150,000. Up to the 100,000 would be reimbursed, I guess is the right word, by the grant. So
we're authorizing 150 and possibly we'll get a grant for 100.
correct.
Right.
And so 150 divided by 3,500 is kind of the estimated households that we'll be servicing in a year?
It's, again, because it's customer driven, yes. I mean, that's part of the data collection with the grant is to see how popular this would be in
It's only
Shrewsbury.
30 households.
30
Yeah,
something.
it's
yeah.
not.
I don't think, I think as you start, it's gonna
42.
be, there's not gonna be more than 30 people would probably
Yeah.
even come in looking for it at the start, you know,
Yeah.
until we get more along the lines, plus,
Oh.
that's my own take.
And just quite candidly, I mean, I managed this project in my engineering days, and, I mean, I saw maybe one a month. And that was over a period of years.
Yeah.
Now, sorry. I was just gonna
I wasn't
say,
raising hands, I was
Well,
scratching my head.
it would ebb and flow.
So if you don't use the grant, like, how long do you have to use the grant money then for this purpose?
That is a good question. I don't know. Do you know the answer to that?
We estimate that the program's gonna last 2 to 5 years.
Oh, wow.
I don't,
And then if we don't use it for this, we have to give the money back?
I don't believe so. Patrick would know the details, but I think he would have checked that. We didn't have to use the funds within a year or so, but we can check that for sure.
How many households, is there a breakdown in the number of households that have underground versus overhead?
I think he said 60%. or just-
60, I think it was
That-
over
What
60,
does that
40 or
translate to
something.
terms? I mean, I sense that this is like a little drop in the bucket when we're talking about 42 households based on the amount of households that are really overhead.
Yeah.
totally agree.
Goodwill gesture, but it's not really much of,
I
gotta start somewhere, I guess.
Exactly. Well, that's what I look at it as, an introduction to the notion of providing an underground rebate to encourage Shrewsbury's properties to underground. And I believe it'll be successful, and then we could just continue that in perpetuity as part of our general strategy to to transitioning our infrastructure to be more resilient.
But would we ever be more affirmative and kind of, are we able to force it somehow, or we cannot?
Okay, another great question. So that one, that would be more of our internal projects. And so that was kind of the next step is we, like we have several overhead projects that we're reconducting right now. What I would like to look at in the future is, instead of doing just routine pole replacements and going through and replacing miles of poles, what I've seen work well is then you convert it to underground, and doing so, you also do each customer premise for them.
But then you're paying, rather than a voluntary program where they're paying.
Exactly.
Yeah, it seems like whenever we have the opportunity to convert, we should convert, and that should be the initiative, and really where our funds should be spent.
Yes. So this is to incentivize folks that would be outside of our SELCO capital investment schedule.
Right. Okay.
Okay, so there's a letter that's attached, a letter of support for grant application. And that's really, what you're looking for us to do is approve the verbiage on that letter to say we recommend, we support your effort and would like to add this letter to your package for the grant.
Exactly, and I believe we will have a hard copy to circulate for
Okay,
a wet signature.
do we have any comments or questions on that proposed letter of support? Hearing none, do we have a motion to accept to approve the letter and
So moved.
that we'll go ahead and sign it?
So moved.
Second?
Second, okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, good,
All right, I appreciate that.
okay. Good luck on that. I could see it being something that, where people, especially where they're maybe tearing down an older, or very much older residence, that's the time to go and put underground utilities in
Exactly.
and use this as a benefit, as an incentive to do it from the get-go, but we'll see what happens.
And it said that all new stuff has to go on underground.
All new construction has to go underground
Housing.
anyway, so.
Yes.
So if you're tearing something down, that would then be new, right?
Yeah, that's true. Well,
So
yeah,
that's
you're
not,
right.
it's not gonna work. It's gonna work for somebody who just has an existing house
If
and
you-
wants to go underground,
Yeah.
right? As opposed to somebody who's tearing down something, wouldn't that be considered
True,
new construction? And they would have to do it anyway?
Then do it anyway, yeah.
yeah, you're right.
True.
Oh,
I was just
sorry,
going to
no, go ahead.
clarify. I believe the caveat of the undergrounding bylaw is, however, if you're in an overhead area that was existing overhead, you actually do have the option to stay overhead.
Uh-huh.
It'd be in like a new subdivision, a new development, but if you, like an individual dwelling,
That's being
that's
reconstructed?
being reconstructed, you still have the option to stay overhead.
Okay.
Okay, moving right along, the general manager's highlights.
Oh, all right. So let's see, I'll just go through these quickly. So, I added in some legislative bits. No particular theme as I try and aggregate interesting bits of topics that are relate to what we've discussed. So I just pulled things that caught my attention in the last month, and some of this I tried to tie back to undergrounding and different investments with respect to weather. But you can see here some energy. There's a potential possible nuclear wind deal that we've been working on. I just thought that would be of note. Any day now, hopefully, we should be hearing some information about our efforts with MWIC in respect to participation in offshore wind. We have,
Relative to the new PPA awarded, we're getting like a slice of the pie.
exactly.
Nice.
Surprisingly, there haven't been any leaks with respect to potential pricing, so that's kind of what we're waiting for. But we are part of the selected successful project, so we will have an opportunity to evaluate if it's something we're interested in.
South Coast or Vineyard?
Vineyard. So, so we'll see with that one, and so I just threw that article in there. As you've probably seen in the news with respect to Connecticut, I think that's interesting, how they're trying to pair the nuclear and wind to make that more appealing for broader participation in that. Just something related to the efficiency and cost savings and dovetails with our rebates and demand side management program. This article here about the millions of dollars in savings with the geothermal. I thought that was particularly interesting, just with respect to same type of theme, high capital cost up front, low maintenance, long-term savings overall. Just some rates items. Like I said, in the interest of time, I won't go through each of these unless you'd like me to call attention to them. Some of the nuclear options here, we've been looking at that more closely. Millstone's been in the news, so we've been looking at things like that. And then always my favorite ones, just to see how outside groups like this utility here in New York look at Public Power versus their incumbent. So those are just there. But turning the attention to more SELCO-specific matters, we had some HR-related activity that I just wanted to call attention to. James, or Jimmy Hendrickson, has been promoted to a working foreman. He's been here for a long time, so that's a well-deserved promotion. Good for him. Raul was our intern. He's now a part-time support specialist. He's excellent. Now, I guess I'm on record saying that. And but he literally, I believe, I've seen him running from site to site. Like, he is that enthusiastic that he's, takes this seriously. So that's good. We have a new help desk technician. So if you call in with an issue, you could get Kurt. So thanks, Kurt, for coming on board here. Tim is now working on the inventory and facilities. You'll see him out and about between the service area and town hall. I believe he's taller than I am, so you'll know who Tim is. And we're working on some broadband technologies network administrator to help us on the service side related to broadband. And then just some of the things that I think that you might be aware of with respect to our activities. There were some channel lineup changes. I just wanted to call attention to that one specifically. We looked at those. So so one could ask, well, why move channels around? So as we were reviewing the contracts, we actually discovered that with different channel placement, you can secure more favorable pricing. So by simply moving the channels, it went from a cost to free.
What nonsense is this?
It's the cable world. So those the channel changes are to lower cost. So that's really the rationale behind that. Spirit of Shrewsbury movie night, a lot of great events there. So I appreciate our team here doing all of that. That's been great. We had the EV event at the Candy Mansion. I think that sounded like it was a good showing and a fair amount of vehicles there, so that's good. And then I wanted to just make that announcement in collaboration with West Boylston Municipal Light Plant. We're hosting a heat pump forum, and the ever creative Val comes up with "Don't be spooked by heat pumps." And so that one is Saturday, October 19th from 10 to 1. They held one on the South Shore a few months ago, which was very successful. So this is modeled after that, and other light plants are trying to recreate that same event in their particular regions of the state. On the electrical engineering side, just calling attention to the big one at the top. We're about 42% deployed, which equates to 7,100 AMI meters. So that project is continuing to make progress there. So good job to that team working on that. And then, as you can see, these are the other projects that relate to some of the things Jim has said, some of the customer-driven projects, the charge jobs that bring in additional revenue that we'll shift gears from SELCO projects to customer projects as needed. And so this is, as you see every month, these are just a sense for what projects are happening around town. And then the other one, this is our first meeting post SELCO stream transition, if I got that timing correct. So that, as you can see here, we put the table in with a bit of a timeline from January to September. We were able to transition from 19% customer base on stream to 100%. And I don't want to underemphasize how much of an undertaking that was for our team, and I don't think they could have done a better job. They did great. So that was a major transition point, and I would say in SELCO's history, moving to a streaming platform, and so we're continuing to make refinements on that. But again, just in how people consume TV, that's a major revolution in technological advancement in the industry. And then I did want to make sure I covered this internet outage from the other day. You can see the report there. And then, so this is, as we're trying as fast as we can to convert to fiber. This internet outage was isolated to our legacy coaxial system, which the equipment is on the older side. And so we're continuing to keep that maintenance going as long as we can, to keep that system working until folks can get on fiber. So you can see these initial 900 customers were impacted on September 15th. And that is a combination of 2 server devices in the head end having basically failures. And you can see the troubleshooting process that we went through. And again, there's a lot of
What a
acronyms
process.
and things to go through to fix that, but the long story short is they got it back up, and all of this equipment goes away when we transition to fiber. So this is that legacy system that we still have, as you can see in the charts further down in the highlights, we still have close to 9,000 folks on the legacy system. And so we're trying to transition that and ramp that up as fast as possible to catch up. But in the meantime, we have a plan for some coax system upgrades, not to, as a balancing act between stranded investment that is going to be replaced in a matter of 24 to 30 months, but at the same time, updates what we have there. So you can see there's the report of fiber and the progress on that. And again, we have a number of crews working every day, so they're going as fast as they can on that. So yeah, I think that's
Despite the speed of which our folks are installing stuff, it seems like the state's holding us up here on these permits.
That is another great point. So we can only go as fast as we can get permitted. We've had some challenging meetings with the state with respect to the criteria, I guess new criteria they're looking to enforce, which essentially halts the project between, asking for a review of literally every time we step foot in the public right-of-way on state roads, and a 6-month plus review window. We wouldn't be able to get anything done in a state right-of-way. So I think we've raised some issues with respect to how workable that is, and candidly the necessity of that. Our methodology has been quite effective over the last decades. So we're working our best. They have a weird provision where you can expedite. If you pay more money, you can potentially expedite 6 months to 4 months, which seems odd, but we've done that. And we're still waiting for some permits to cross Route 20, Route 9, and things like that. So we're working our way through that as best we can.
That includes Maple Ave, right?
Maple Ave. Yeah. So.
It's ridiculous.
So we're plugging along and navigating that and adjusting our work schedule as best we can to react to timelines with permit approvals and whatnot.
Okay, let's see. I got nothing.
Well, don't forget to visit the SELCO booth at the expo this weekend.
Yes,
Don't forget Spirit of Shrewsbury.
That's right.
Nice plug, Maria.
Good plug, yeah.
Yeah.
So Val, you have anything special for the expo booth?
Of course.
Okay. Or lightsabers?
No, we have a couple of little giveaways, some nice night lights. Obviously, we'll have information about our programs and rebates. And we also have a raffle going on for green lawn equipment.
Yeah, so, I mean, that's an excellent thing that people swing by, get out and go to the expo. I noticed they already have the lawnmowers
Yep.
in stock, ready to go and be awarded, so we get down there and win a free electric lawnmower and any of the other stuff that's there. This would be excellent. Great time, good. And that's down at St. John, is that down at St. John's this year?
It
It
is,
is,
yep.
yeah.
Okay,
10 to 3.
okay, great. 10 to 3 on Saturday?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, with that said, our next meeting is set for Tuesday, October 22nd, at 8 a.m. I'll entertain in a short while here a motion to close this open session, but we need to go into, followed by going into executive session, so it'll be a roll call vote real quick. And it's to enter into an executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 2110, to discuss trade secrets or confidential, competitively sensitive, or other proprietary information provided in the course of activities conducted by a governmental body as an energy supplier under a license granted by the Department of Public Utilities pursuant to General Law, Chapter 164, Subparagraph 1, Foxtrot Fiber Expansion. With that, do I have a motion to close the open meeting and to go into executive session?
So moved.
Second?
Okay, do a roll call vote. Mike?
Yes.
Maria?
Yes.
Tony?
Yes.
Yes.
Matt? And Bob Holland, yes. Okay, with that, this meeting is closed at 9:05, and we'll go into executive session. Thank you very much.
Okay.